kind of have this vision of God as being up there. God is in the heaven, which is true. But we have to understand that as part of the process of creating this world, and in order to allow us to exist in this world, God decided not to just keep himself up in the heavens with all of the beautiful and perfect holiness of what being God means. But God brought himself down to this world, lowered himself into this world, and he did that out of his love for us. There's a very interesting comment in the Zohar that brings us out so beautifully. And the Zohar is commenting on the word Bereshis, which is the first word of the Torah. It's generally translated as in the beginning. And the Zohar uses a technique called gematria. What gematria means is that every letter in the Jewish alphabet has a numerical value. And frequently we can find associations between different words because they share the same numerical value. And the Zohar actually takes this one step further in this case and uses a subset of the rules of gematria that's called mispar katan. What mispar katan means is that if you have a letter whose numerical value is greater than 10, because the way it works is we have numbers 1 through 10, and we've got counting by tens, 10 through 100, and then counting by hundreds, 100 through 900. That's the full complement of the gematria of all the letters. And when you use this technique called mispar katan, in that case you don't look at tens or hundreds. And therefore if you've got a letter whose gematria is 600, you're going to look at it as if it's a 6. If you've got a letter whose gematria is 80, you're going to look at it as if it's only an 8. Using this idea, let's examine now the word Bereshis. In the beginning, the first word, the first step of God's act of creating the world, and let's see what its mispar katan is. Again, what is its numerical value if we strip out all of the tens and hundreds? So the first letter of Bereshis is the Hebrew letter Beis, which is 2. The second letter is Resh, and its numerical value is 200, but again we're stripping away all the hundreds. We're going to call that a 2 as well. Then comes an Aleph, which equals 1. A Shin, which is 300, and we're going to count as 3. Yud, which is 10, and we're going to count that as 1. And finally a Tuf, which is 400, and we're going to count that as 4. So you've got 2 plus 2, plus 1, plus 3, plus 1, plus 4, and that equals 13. And then the Zohar says that that is the identical gematria that has the same numerical value as the Hebrew word ahava, love. And it's like that in order to indicate to you that the entire reason of creation, why God made this beautiful world in which we live, was as an act of love. And that's actually why we use over here this technique called mispar katan. Because you might ask, well, why is it legitimate to strip out all the tens and all the hundreds? That's not the full gematria of the word. Why are you playing around with it like that? But the answer is because that's really what God did when He created the world. He didn't create the world with all of His great and manifest presence. Because if God had, there couldn't be any existence. We could not exist in the face of the full force of God's holiness and God's power. And therefore, in order to create this world, God had to, so to speak, shrink Himself down. In Kabbalistic terms, this is referred to as tzimtzum, which literally means to limit Himself. God had to shrink Himself down, make Himself much smaller than He really is, in order for there to be room for this world to exist. And God did that to himself. He shrunk himself down and he put limits on himself simply for the reason that he loved us and wanted to make sure that we could exist and have a place in which we could operate, in which we could exist. So you see then that an essential element of love is the humility to lower yourself, to shrink yourself, and to make yourself smaller, all for the sake of the one or the ones who you love.